The world changed for Daniel Weston the moment his father's private plane touched down on the edge of the southern jungles, far from the cold gleam of Manhattan and the echo of his family's billions. Here the air was thick, alive with buzzing insects, wild with the scent of soil and sun, and leaves so green they seemed painted by dreams. Daniel had never felt so small or so awake or so sure that he didn't belong. His father owned companies and continents. Men stood when he entered a room, women stiffened their spines. Daniel was used to walking through doors that others held open, to floors so polished he could see his own face in them. But in the jungle, none of that mattered. Sweat clung to his back and his designer boots sank into mud. The only thing money did here was slow him down. He hadn't wanted to come, not really. The official story was a business opportunity, his father's code for another land grab in a world that still had corners to conquer. But Daniel had grown weary of boardrooms, negotiations that ended in other people's endings. He'd thought maybe out here he could breathe air his father had not already purchased. The local guide, old wiry, always half smiling, led him along trails lined with ancient trees and spindly roots. Every step felt like a step further away from his father's shadow. Somewhere beyond the next turning, the jungle pulsed with the rhythm of life that owed nothing to money or power. That's where he saw her. At first, she was just a flash. Brown skin, black hair, clothes woven from rough cloth, moving in and out of shafts of sun as if she belonged to the forest itself. She laughed when a monkey chattered overhead, tossing her a piece of fruit. Her eyes were the warm gold of honey, wide and unguarded, and Daniel knew, without understanding why, that he would not forget her. She did not see him at first. He watched her from the tangled edge of the path, something in him shrinking with shame at the expensive watch on his wrist, the way his presence bent the world around it. The guide called out softly in the local language, and she turned. Close up, she looked younger than him, maybe 19, maybe 20. She was barefoot, a woven basket slung over one shoulder, strips of deep green leaves clinging to her skirt. She stared frankly at Daniel, as if he were no more remarkable than the crickets that leapt through the grass. That stare stripped him bare. No one had looked at him like that since childhood, not his friends, not even his father. The guide introduced her as Maya. Daniel repeated her name, unsure if he'd spoken it right. She smiled, not in shyness, but as if she knew a joke he didn't. "You are the man from the city," she said, her English clear but accented. "Are you lost?" He laughed, a little desperately. "Maybe I am." She studied him for a long time, and Daniel found himself wanting her approval more than he'd wanted anything all year. "You walk heavy," Maya said. "You look for things that are not here, I think." He had no answer for that. She motioned for him to follow her, and before he could protest, set off into the shade of the trees. In the days that followed, Daniel found excuses to wander further. He came with the guide, but soon asked to learn on his own. Maya was always nearby, tending plants, carrying water from the creek, repairing huts made from split bamboo. The tribal village was small, only a handful of families, but laughter spilled from doorways, and the children were fearless, weaving through Daniel's legs, daring him to chase them. Maya became his teacher in the quiet art of belonging, not with grand gestures, but with small ones. She showed him how to peel fruit without bruising it, how to trap fish in slow-moving water. She laughed at his clumsy efforts, and when he slipped and fell, she offered her hand, strong and calloused, to pull him up. Under her gaze, Daniel felt every mask he'd ever worn slowly come undone. Some evenings, when the air cooled and fires glimmered in the half-dark, Daniel sat with Maya at the edge of the village, their words tumbling out in secret fragments. He told her of life in a city with lights so bright they drowned out the stars, of loneliness in rooms filled with glass and echoes. She listened, eyes shining, and spoke of the river that fed her people, the grandmother who sang stories, the way the wind sounded before the monsoon. He didn't know when he fell in love. Only that one night, as Maya brushed the tangles from her hair, she looked at him with a gentleness that made his ribs ache. He reached for her hand, and she let him hold it, their fingers twining together as if they'd always belonged that way. Far away, in a world of glass towers, Daniel's father was making calls, setting in motion plans that would not be stopped. But here, in the hush between dusk and dreams, Daniel found a happiness so fierce and so fragile he almost couldn't bear it. Daniel counted the days by the changes in Maya's smiles. Sometimes her shyness made him ache. Other days her laughter flashed through the air like sunlight, warm and loud, brighter than the jewelry he left gathering dust beside his bed. The jungle taught him how to listen, how to sit still and let the world open to him in waves of scent and sound. A far cry from the offices where he'd once performed strength, where silence was never peace, but merely tension waiting to shatter. Daniel sent no messages home, made no calls to his father. The days spun into weeks, and his absence from business negotiations became a subject of worry and eventually of anger. Even so, he delayed. In the village, he and Maya found a rhythm so natural it felt predestined, helping the elders repair a roof, gathering fruit. Skin warmed by the fire as the families drifted into song under star-splattered night. Yet nothing stays hidden forever. The day news from America reached Daniel. It came in the form of a company helicopter, its blades chopping the sky, scattering birds and bringing a cloud of red dust to the edge of the village. Maya's little brother was the first to see it. He ran to Daniel, panic in his voice, but Daniel's heart dropped for a different reason. A cold, guilty certainty that the boundary between two worlds had finally cracked. Out stepped Morton Weston, Daniel's father. He wore a linen suit far too fine for this place, his hair unmistakably silver, his sharp blue eyes more dangerous than any snake. The entire village seemed to shrink from his presence. The women herded the children inside. The men watched with stone-silent suspicion. Morton looked at his son as if he were studying a faulty piece of machinery. "Is this where you've been hiding?" he asked, words as sharp as hail. Daniel found his tongue stuck fast in his throat. He glanced at Maya, who stood behind him, strong and unbowed, though her hands clenched tight with worry. "Is this her?" the CEO continued, staring openly at Maya. "This is what you left your future for? This native girl?" Daniel stiffened, shame and anger colliding in his chest, but Maya's face did not move. She gazed back, head held high, meeting Morton's contempt with a dignity Daniel envied. "I chose to be here," Daniel said. "She's not a project, she's not a mistake. She's the best person I've ever met." Morton Weston turned his gaze on his son, voice icy. "You're a Weston, you don't marry for sentiment. Our family didn't build empires so you could throw your life away on this." His hand waved dismissively, a gesture that in one swoop dismissed 1,000 years of Maya's lineage. Everything Daniel had come to love. He wasn't surprised when his father gave him an ultimatum: return to the city, leave Maya, and step back into the family's world of profit and privilege. "If you refuse, you won't just lose your inheritance, Daniel. You'll make an enemy out of me." For Morton Weston, there was no worse fate. Daniel's voice shook, but his resolve was clear. "I don't want your money, I want her." Morton's face twisted, something ugly and ancient in his features. "You've made your choice then," he said, and turned away, punching something into his phone before boarding the helicopter again. The peace of the village never returned. Daniel tried to shield Maya and her family from his father's wrath, but trouble came swiftly, first in whispers, then in the form of threats. Strangers were seen in the jungle, moving with strange purpose. The tribal elders received warnings: leave or face consequences. One evening, a fire broke out at the edge of the village, set under cover of darkness. Men from the nearby mining operation, one that Morton's corporation funded, arrived in trucks, their engines growling. Daniel recognized 2 of his father's bodyguards among the group. They claimed it was an accident, but no one believed it. Maya's family tried to hide their fear, but the sense of safety Daniel once felt had evaporated. Maya herself grew quieter, her smiles rarer, her eyes shadowed. Even so, she refused to let him blame himself. "This is not your fault," she told him softly. "You did not teach him how to hate." It was Daniel's turn to be brave. At a village meeting beneath the great fig tree, he told the elders what he knew, that it was no accident, that the threats came from his world, not theirs. "If you want me to leave, I'll go," he said, the words choking him. "I won't bring more pain to your home." But Maya stood beside him, her hand in his. "You are my home now," she said. That night they made an oath. If the world would not let them be together, they would find a way to leave it behind. Daniel began quietly making plans, seeking allies, arranging passage upriver, hoping to buy just enough time for the worst of his father's rage to cool. But the old world was relentless. With every day, the pressure mounted. Daniel watched people he cared for look over their shoulders, saw children cry at the sound of a distant engine, saw Maya flinch when new bruises appeared on her brother's arms. He tried to comfort her, tried to be strong. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel would hold Maya in the dark and whisper the stories of the New York sky, how it never slept, how even loneliness could be bright. She listened quietly, her heart pounding beneath his hand. "You were born in a fortress," she said, "but here you need only love to be strong." He thought they would find a way. But the jungle knew better. It had seen too many outsiders bring trouble, too many promises broken at the hands of power and pride. And somewhere far away, Morton Weston issued new orders. This time, neither warnings nor bribes, but violence. The air hung thick with dread in the days that followed. Daniel slept with one arm around Maya and one ear tuned to every sound beyond their door, the distant crack of branches, the whisper of footsteps that didn't belong. By now, the entire village sensed what was coming. Families huddled close, elders kept torches burning late into the night. It was the sort of fear that changed everything. How people walked, how laughter sounded, how Maya's little brother clung to his mother and wept. Even the animals grew restless, birds cawing at odd hours, monkeys falling silent for entire afternoons. And all around them the jungle waited, holding secrets it couldn't save. Daniel found himself consumed with guilt and helplessness. He met with the elders, pleading with them to let him at least stand guard at the edge of the village. But they spoke quietly of an old truth. The jungle protected its own, but only up to a point. "Your world," one old woman murmured, "it always finds a way to break through." Maya's bravery endured, but her body showed signs of the strain, her face thinner, her voice sometimes trembling. Yet she would not run, nor would she let Daniel go. "If you leave," she whispered one night, "they win. Love means nothing if we can't fight with it." It happened on the fourth night after the threats had grown too bold to ignore. Under the cover of darkness, trucks roared into the narrow clearing, headlights flooding the huts with harsh white light. Figures spilled out, some Daniel recognized, most he didn't. Their words were slurred with anger, their hands heavy with weapons. Daniel stood at the entrance to Maya's family's hut, trying to shield her with his body even as terror gnawed at his insides. He saw the same bodyguards who'd once opened limousines for his father now kicking down clay pots, setting fire to baskets, shouting to drive families from their homes. Morton Weston himself was not there. He had grown too clever, too careful for that. But his presence was felt in every command, in the way the attackers avoided nothing and no one, in the merciless rush to dominate every corner of the village. Daniel shouted for them to stop, placing himself between Maya and the encroaching violence. He tried to reason, tried to threaten with the Weston name, but to these men he was merely another obstacle. Someone grabbed his shoulder, spun him around, fist connecting with his jaw. He tasted dirt and blood. Maya screamed, trying to pull him free. Another man yanked her back, and for a moment Daniel saw something break in her eyes, the endless courage eclipsed by horror. A gun discharged, a single echoing crack. The world slowed. Daniel turned, heart in his throat, just as Maya crumpled to the ground, her hands pressed desperately to her side. Someone shrieked. The night blurred, his hearing disappeared beneath the oncoming storm of his own pulse. He lunged for her, dragging her into his arms. All reason vanished. There was no more running, no more placating, only the terrible knowledge that he was losing her. Blood soaked her dress, warm and bright against his hands. "It's okay," Maya whispered, her voice wet with pain. "You're here. You're home." Everything happened in fragments. Yelling, footsteps pounding across dirt, villagers scattering, a figure standing over him raising another gun. This time the world did not slow. The second shot rang out and Daniel felt the impact deep in his chest, hot and electric, racing through every nerve all at once. He sagged over Maya, her hands still curled in his shirt, his own blood seeping down her hair. For a brief, strange moment, his senses sharpened. He smelled the sharp green of crushed leaves, heard the sad, shaking sobs of Maya's brother. Saw the sky above them split by one perfect line of lightning. The attack ended as suddenly as it began. The men scattered before dawn, their work done, their hearts untouched. In the muddy clearing, Daniel and Maya lay together, tangled in each other's arms. Words left them too quickly, replaced only by ragged breaths and the weight of what could never be. Around them, the village burned and healed at the same time. People emerged, tending wounds, weeping for the lost, shoring up hope with the same hands that had built homes from nothing. Daniel's father never returned to the jungle. From his office, he heard news of the incident, a few lines in a report, a troubled investment. Perhaps for a moment his hands shook, but no one saw. He filled the silence with new deals and new towers, all the while never daring to wonder if the price of his legacy was far steeper than gold. And in the jungle, as the sun rose on smoke and sorrow, an old woman gathered wildflowers and laid them at the place where the lovers had fallen. She whispered a blessing for Daniel and Maya, for every sacrifice made in the name of love and every life broken by pride. The world would move on, as it always does. Stock markets recover, wounds scab over, but some stories linger in the wind in ways that power can never erase. The jungle was quiet after the violence, as if the earth itself mourned. Where laughter once floated on the air, there was only the hush of smoke curling from smoldering huts and the low, animal whimpering of the wounded and lost. The villagers gathered their dead and comforted the children. The elders moved with broken dignity among ruined gardens, picking up the pieces of their shattered home. Near the edge of the clearing, beneath a great tangle of vines, Daniel and Maya lay as the dawn stretched gold light across their faces. Their breathing was thin and shallow. Daniel clung to Maya's hand, fingers sticky with shared blood, and in those dwindling moments, it seemed to him that there was no jungle, no city, no world at all but her. She turned to him, her voice barely a breath. "I knew you loved me," she said. "From the first night you looked at me not like a stranger, but like someone finally found." Daniel tried to respond, but his voice caught, tears streaming silently down his cheeks, helpless. The words too large for his broken chest. He pressed his nose against her hair, whispering against her temple, "There's nothing left but you. If I could have saved you," Maya smiled, a soft curve of her lips despite the pain. "You saved me already. You loved me. You saw me." Around them, the world began to blur, colors fading at the edges, as if the light itself could not bear to witness the end. Across continents, Morton Weston sat behind glass desks and screens, drowning his regret in the noise of endless acquisitions. But late at night, in the silence of offices high above sleeping streets, he remembered his son's laughter and the sweetness in his eyes when he spoke of things money could never buy. Each memory struck him with the sharpness of a blade. A father whose hands, always tight around fortune, had never learned how to hold what truly mattered. The villagers buried Daniel and Maya together, side by side in a shallow grave, overlooking the river where they'd once traded stories and dreams. The children wove garlands of jungle flowers, laying them on the freshly cut earth. An old shaman painted their faces in white and yellow, whispering blessings to the spirits who had watched over their love, and would now carry them where pain and separation could never follow. In the weeks that followed, the violence faded into legend. Some travelers said they heard Maya singing in the wind, her voice calling Daniel home. Others claimed that, on nights when the moon was full, two shadows danced among the trees, never afraid, always together. The stories grew, feeding hope in hearts that still beat with fear and longing. But farther away, in New York's canyons of glass, Morton Weston only grew colder. The victory of breaking his son's spirit turned to ashes in his mouth. His rivals called him ruthless. The papers praised his power. But in moments no one saw, he stared at the photo of a young man with laughing eyes and wondered what it would take to feel whole. He did not know how to mend the world he had broken. He did not know how to resurrect love with money or erase regret with another tower built skyward. One rainy evening, the village lit a single fire at sunset, their faces drawn close in a ring of mourning and hope. The shaman raised his hands to the sky, calling the names of those lost and those left behind. The children sang a song for Maya, voice after voice rising until the flame drew tears from every eye. A woman in a yellow shawl knelt by the grave as the fire burned low, running her fingers through the wildflowers. She whispered, "You built a bridge not with stone but with love. Someday that will save us all." Even the jungle seemed gentler as months passed. New shoots grew, scars healed, life pressed onward, determined to outlast grief. The elders told the story whenever young hearts trembled on the edge of courage and fear. Remember Daniel and Maya. Remember what happens when pride is stronger than love. But also remember the light their love left. It still grows if you care for it. And so, the legend of their sacrifice echoed on. For generations, lovers and dreamers stood on the riverbank, staring at the current, whispering promises beneath the same vast sky that once saw two souls staked everything against the world, and lost. But love, the jungle knows, is never wasted. It roots itself in strange, impossible places, cracks open even the hardest of hearts, and lingers quietly wherever kindness finds the strength to rise against cruelty. That is all the world can promise. What you give away stays. What you destroy never truly leaves you. And as the jungle returns, green and alive, it remembers Daniel and Maya, not as lost, but as proof that somewhere, even in the deepest shadows, love once walked and dared to shine.